everybody. For those who are not familiar with our faces just yet, I am Drak.
I am Shadow.
You should probably have seen him from his anime reviews. Now, people might be wondering, why are we sitting here on the couch just recording ourselves? Aside from we just look that darn good. What? I'm the only one that thought that? Oh, okay. So this is actually going to be one of our newest additions to the channel. We're going to be doing movie vlogs.
That's right.
So, and today we actually just barely got back from both of our second showings of The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug. I'm going to say it the Peter Jackson way because it just sounds better. But, so yeah, we actually have seen this twice. I have only seen it in 2D, whereas you have seen it in 2D and 3D.
That's right.
And just to give kind of a little bit of history, have you actually read the books?
I didn't read the original Lord of the Rings books. I did read The Hobbit when I was in middle school. It was a required read for us.
Wow, that's a good idea. Apparently he's very popular right now.
Yes,
so your viewpoint of Bree, the whole scene.
I honestly felt that could have probably been lost from the movie. Probably put into the DVD later, or frankly it should have been in the first movie.
Yeah, it was one of those weird things where I'm sure that Peter had the issue that he did with Two Towers, where he didn't really want to do a prologue, but New Line kind of forced him to do it. So he puts in the fight with Gandalf and the Balrog. So in the meantime, this was kind of forced on him, is that he had to show Thorin and Gandalf coming together.
Any particular reason why they're forcing them? Because generally...
That's my guess. I don't know that they're actually... I won't probably know until the extended edition comes out, but I'll bet that that's kind of what happened, because it did with Two Towers.
Just seems a little contradictory, because generally studios like to have shorter films, because shorter films get more screenings in a day, thus more profit.
Yes, but I mean, New Line was also one of the few people, like, perfect example of this is in Fellowship. There wasn't supposed to be a prologue in that either. There wasn't supposed to be the Tale of Sauron. New Line actually pushed that onto Peter to explain the stakes. So he puts it in, and he begrudgingly did it. So in the meantime, that's what I'm guessing happened here. Bree could have been just an extended edition thing, but I guess they decided against it. Plus, who knows? Maybe Peter just wanted a quick plug for himself.
Yeah,
because obviously the director plug came in Bree, and very, very obvious. It was actually kind of funny how quickly we saw Peter coming out munching on a carrot. So now, I guess we just keep on going forward. So after that, we begin the trek into Mirkwood. But in the meantime, we actually stop off in a scene that I literally didn't think would make the movie from the books, which was Bjorn the Shape Changer. It didn't really make a whole lot of sense for that to be in there. That, again, would have been another extended scene. And it was, don't get me wrong, it was wonderfully done, but it made absolutely no sense why it was in there.
Really? I just kind of took it as it's where they took shelter from the pursuing orcs.
Yeah, but in the meantime, they could have literally just started off at Mirkwood and had it go from there, because that's kind of how they were hinting at the end of An Unexpected Journey, that it was going to Mirkwood, and that's where we were going to start up next. So there really isn't much to talk about there aside from giant CGBs. Ooh, giant bees, my god. Bees, my god. Yes, we had to go for the Linkara reference. Sorry, Linkara. And so from there, we actually go into Mirkwood. And wow. Both the beginning of it and the middle, or I guess you could say the middle of Mirkwood, where the elves are actually residing. Very beautiful in both cases. You really got a dark and haunting feeling in Mirkwood. And I will just say this, man. I love the people over at Weta, but they're CG spiders, man. They gotta stop. Because even I was like sitting there going, in a lot of cases, and I may be the only one that thinks this, but those spiders look probably more vicious than Shelob did in Return of the King.
They did, really.
So it was really just like, okay, congratulations, Weta, you one-upped yourself. Can we stop one-upping ourselves with the CG bugs?
I'm amazed I was able to sit through it being a big arachnophobe myself.
Oh yeah, like I was sitting there in the seat just going, because they looked very vicious. And so I'm going to say this over and over in my review of it, basically, that this was basically an appreciation movie for the people it was. Because that's all really you get in this entire movie is all their work. And it shines so gloriously. Mm-hmm. Especially their CG department, the new orc in the movie. We don't just have Arzak the Defiler, we have Bolg, I guess is his name. And so he stands out as, I mean, the CG is just awesome, except for a few parts, but we'll get to that. Any thoughts from you on Mirkwood?
It was a creepy ass scene. Glad it didn't go too long. The spiders really were scary.
Although the cool part was this actually got allowed for Martin Freeman to shine as Bilbo. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things I've loved from the first movie is that he has those tiny little mannerisms that just make the character. And I love that little moment where he's trying to think straight, and so he's like,
yeah.
And I've also been appreciating Martin Freeman, and we'll get into him later, but Benedict Cumberbatch, because I've been watching Sherlock, and they have those tiny little mannerisms in that show too. And so, yeah, the beginning of Mirkwood really makes Bilbo as a character. Mm-hmm. And you really try to get the feeling of he is completely disoriented, he needs to fix this, and so he's trying to make himself think straight.
Yes.
And also the moment of the ring, where he, again, spoilers, guys, he kills what we're guessing is a spider child to get the ring back.
Yeah.
That was a scary moment. Because he just brutally murders this thing, and then all of a sudden picks up that ring, and in just this maddening rage, mine. And then at that point, it all comes back to him. It all sinks. He's about to throw up. And
yeah, that was quite a scene.
I really thought that An Unexpected Journey was going to make Bilbo. This actually made him a little bit better for Martin. He got a lot of individual moments that made him shine as a character. But yeah, so any other thoughts on Mirkwood?
That's about it, really.
Shall we get to the elves?
Let's get to the elves. The elves.
You mean the Liv Tyler insert and CG Orlando Bloom?
Evangeline Lilly. I gotta say, I didn't see much of a purpose for Legolas in this whole subplot.
No, he's not even in the book.
I know he's not in the book. I figured he wasn't, honestly. It's been a while since I've read it. I don't remember a lot of it.
Yeah.
Because I just tried to... it's Tolkien. He writes, like, a freaking instruction manual.
Yes.
And
so even if you don't have an actual reference, as proven in the other three movies, you can just dip into the Silmarillion and make a story. I mean, the perfect example of this, and we'll get into it a little bit later, is the Necromancer storyline.
Yeah.
It works perfectly, but I gotta say, the only problem that I had with the CG in this movie was Orlando Bloom. Mm-hmm. I get it, he's aged, but they had two problems with bringing him in here, and I get it, okay? He was freaking invincible in the last two movies and gained quite a following. I mean, you could probably say that he was way more popular than Aragorn, and he wasn't supposed to be. Mm-hmm. So at that point, they had two problems with him. Either they bogged him down in a bunch of makeup to show that he was the exact same Legolas.
Right.
Or they used this kind of a CG mask. And maybe it was just me, but it always looked like when they were doing that his face was just an inch further out than it needed to be, or than it should be. And so it looked fake. It looked... I'm going to say it was a step up from X-Men Origins doing the Patrick Stewart mask. Mm-hmm. Which was really bad CG. So that's my only complaint with the CG, is that I get the task that they had, but I much would have rather just not brought Orlando back if that was going to be the problem. And Evangeline Lilly, I have no problem with her in this movie. I think she did very well. The problem that I see with the character of Tauriel is that she was Liv Tyler in this movie.
Right. Especially
since she kind of reenacts the whole... at the last Kingsfoil moment with, which of the door? I think it was Keeley that was poisoned in this one. So, and then I'm also going to make this point clear, because I was just talking about this with Alex, is because Orlando Bloom is so invincible in the last two movies, for some reason the Mirkwood elves are like the samurai of Middle-earth. Specifically, there's a moment where the king, Thranduil, is interrogating an orc, And the orc starts, sputtering off his rhetorical nonsense, and finally, you can tell Thranduil gets so annoyed with it that he literally pulls a samurai move, cuts off the dude's head, and then puts it right back in the sheath. And I'm just like, holy crap, the Mirkwood Elves are the samurai of Middle-earth. That's why Legolas can't be killed. And that's why Tauriel can't be killed. They are like a two-man army.
Pretty much.
Aside from that, Mirkwood was a very colorful concept. The only problem that I had with it was the music, because it was adopted from the original 3 films. It was the Lothlorien theme, and because of that, it almost felt like it should have had like a whole blue tinge to it. It should have felt like Cate Blanchett was going to come out of the background, and we were going to have another good moment with her, but instead we got Thranduil, and I'm not saying he was a bad actor, but there really wasn't enough for him to carry, for him to be in this movie. Maybe they're setting him up for the 3rd movie, but he didn't really need to be here, and they didn't need to have that moment where Richard Armitage is cursing at him. It makes about as much sense as Fellowship Extended, where Gimli curses out the elves, and having Aragorn look him in the eye and go, that was not appropriate. But yeah, so that takes us into... Oh, should we go into Bombur?
Okay.
For the first movie, people kind of noticed that Bombur is, the biggest dwarf, and so he's the comedy element. And in the first movie, it was like, let's find ways for him to bring furniture, so we'll add on to his weight.
Right, the whole river fight scene was...
Yes, so in this one it was trying to make him an action star, but in the most cartoonish way possible.
Yeah, bust out of the barrel!
Oh my gosh, okay, so they have this moment where he's literally bouncing, and you're just waiting for him to stop in this barrel, just bouncing, killing off so many orcs, and then all of a sudden when he's done, he literally stands up and busts out 2 axes, almost like a Tom and Jerry cartoon. It felt so out of place.
I'll give them credit, at least they didn't do that stupid film ramping, which I really hate, is when the film kind of sputters when it slows down and speeds up again.
Yes, and it felt like if they were going to do that, it would be with Bombur.
I'm glad they didn't think.
No,
yeah,
and
that's really annoying.
And that would have discredited the actor as well. And I actually, through the extended, have loved the actor for Bombur, and he's gone through a lot, especially since Peter had a really weird fascination with stuffing his face. So we had a lot of moments like that. So basically from there, we go into the introduction of Bard, played by Richard Evans, who, I swear, man,
He looks like a much older Orlando
He looks like
Bloom.
Will Turner. He looks like the current Orlando Bloom. I actually thought we had a dual play. They wanted to plug Orlando, so yes, he's playing Legolas, but he's also playing Bard. And that's not the case. We instead got Richard Evans, who...
No, Luke Evans.
Luke Evans, my bad. Who was from Clash of the Titans. Unfortunately, I haven't seen those. I haven't seen Immortals. He's done a few TV spots that I recognized, but that was about it. And thoughts on Bard, because he kind of has to be the Aragorn of this story.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. He was an Aragorn. I kind of thought the other dwarf who.
Yeah, they were really kind of setting up Keeley to be that too.
Yeah, he looked. I kept wondering to myself, is he Aragorn?
In a lot of cases, you could also make the claim that he's supposed to be like an Aragorn Legolas hybrid because he's supposed to be an archer.
Yeah. And
so he's had like a lot of arrows go true. But Legolas is in the movie, so we can't make that claim.
He was an interesting character, I guess. It was kind of, I think, nice to have that. I guess we're going to get more of a payoff with him for the next movie. That's really what they're setting up.
That's really what they did with this movie, is that they set up his lineage as the ancestor of the Lord of the City of Dale. And so he's supposed to be the ancestor of the one that couldn't kill the dragon Smaug. And so you have that over his head, but at the same time wanting him to redeem himself.
And then you have the other king and the not Grima Wormtongue.
Oh. Yeah, what did they call him? The Master of Lake Town.
Yes.
First of all, with Lake Town, this is again one of those moments where Weta got to shine, because that town looked just absolutely claustrophobic. It looked like It looked perfectly like this is what they wanted to do with Bree, but couldn't. So I will compliment them on that. And also the Howard Shore I'll compliment for the theme of Lake Town, because it really just adds to the claustrophobia. But I agree with you. The Master was absolutely gross, and the Greenman Wormtongue. I guess you really can't call him anything else. I don't remember if he actually got named in this movie.
I don't think he did, but I'm just going to call him not Greenman Wormtongue.
Yeah, there you go, not Wormtongue.
It's a shame they didn't get Brad Dourif to play him again.
Oh, that would have been awesome, man. And actually have him play like a Cockney. It would have been great.
Well, for first time I watched it, I kind of wondered, is that Wormtongue?
It's supposed to be the Wormtongue in this one, but yeah, it should have been.
He's a Wormtongue clone, but I thought maybe
that
it was
been
actually Grima Wormtongue.
That would have been perfect, and then you have him kind of slowly get set up that he's moving off to Rohan. And there you go, Greenman Wormtongue is foreshadowing. And that's another thing that kind of happens throughout this movie, is that they really do work hard on foreshadowing the Lord of the Rings, when they really don't need to do that, but the only tie from the books is Bilbo's exploits.
Yeah.
So they did a good job, I think, but a lot of it felt kind of unnecessary. But yeah, there really isn't much to say about Lake Town, except for some of the dialogue between Thorin and Bard was really compelling, because where Thorin is intent on reclaiming his homeland and has been told he has to reclaim his homeland, Bard is saying that's not a good idea. So you have a lot of great moments, especially when Bard pulls out the final black arrow, the one that his ancestor could have killed Smaug with.
Yeah.
But then let's backtrack a little bit, because in between all of this, we're given kind of a Two Towers-esque concept of going into multiple storylines, and we're also following Gandalf, because he has to step aside in Mirkwood to go to the ruins of Dun Guldur. But before then, he has to go to the what we're supposedly thinking is the tomb of the Nazgul, where the Nine Ring Wraiths were buried. And so they have this a couple of really good moments with him and Sylvester McCoy, who played Radagast, just trying to explain the origin of this tomb and why it's evil and what was entombed in it. And then we go into the ruins of Dol Guldur, and having... Here's the thing I want to ask you, Alex, because one of the defining moments of Gandalf was him versus the Balrog. It's memed to this day. And it really felt like in Dun Guldur, they were trying to recreate and maybe even best it. Try to give Gandalf an even bigger badass moment.
Yeah.
And so I guess my question at this point, Alex, is did they succeed in doing that, or did they just make it look like, oh yeah, we're trying to make Ian McKellen look even more badass than he is?
It's more of a let's make Ian McKellen a badass. The reason why the Moria battle with the Balrog is so mimetic is because of his famous line, "You cannot pass, you shall not pass," and that's what really makes it so memorable. And we didn't have a line for this one. Yeah, there was really no line, and that's probably for the best. You don't need to shoehorn in something.
It would have, I think, hurt the moment, but the CG, don't get me wrong, still made it a cool moment in the fact that he's fighting off the darkness, and he has to keep on reigniting his staff to do it. And then again, here was where we got a lot of the foreshadowing of Dun Guldur. Was the Necromancer turns out to be, what we're assuming here is Sauron the Deceiver. And so I actually like the idea of him kind of walking out, because this is one of those things they couldn't do in Return of the King, have Sauron walk out, because it would have been too daunting.
Yeah.
In this one, they have him walk out, he's pure fire, and it just so happens that his visage forms the Eye of Sauron.
Yeah.
And that made sense. And I'll bet in 3D, this would be one of the best moments of the film.
It really looked cool in 3D, and I wasn't pretty...
Constantly just going out.
I wasn't fond of the 3D showing, and I'll get into that in a bit, but yeah, it really looked really great in 3D, I gotta say, and that was a really great scene.
Yeah, and that really felt to me like Peter Jackson had come full circle. He was able to show Sauron without Sauron being too overpowering. I mean, he is more powerful than Gandalf at this present stage.
Yeah.
So he can flaunt that, and that's fine. But at the same time, you have to show that he doesn't have full strength yet. His power is in the fact that he has orcs. And he hasn't found the one icon, and hasn't even begun the search for the one thing that can bring him back to true power. So that's really Dun Guldur, and it happens throughout the story. We just flash back to it. And then, of course, the third flash in the Two Towers is going between Legolas and Tauriel and explaining their story.
Yeah.
And how they're trying to be better than Thranduil and try to fix the situation, whereas their king wants to just bar the doors and let the darkness pass. So after Lake Town, we finally get to the moment that people have been waiting for this entire time. The opening of the door. I actually love that moment, the way they did it, is that since it was moon letters that actually inscribed it, they didn't think of the fact that it might have been the moon that opened the door. Instead, we've been set up this entire time that it's supposed to be the sunset that's supposed to do this, and then when they have the sun finally fall, and all the dwarves lose faith, and they think that they have made this trip for nothing, they've hurried at this point, and they start walking off, and then Bilbo gets it. Because he literally reads the dialogue, and then he sees the thresh knocking. And I thought that was brilliantly done. Yeah. Especially in the fact that you think that Thorin's really given up, and then he comes back at the very end, right as that key is supposed to fall off the mountain, bam! The boot catches it. That was a really great moment for Thorin, I think. And also for Bilbo, because he's kind of, as we found out in the first movie, he kind of hope that ties them all together. And they've really set him up as the tie that binds. So, really great moment. I love the evacuation route. It just shows that the dwarves really love Tetris as a game. Because they have that whole stairway that just looked like Tetris blocks. But then here's the moment that everybody wanted probably us to talk about, is the feature character of, in fact, he's part of the story, he's part of the subtitle, Smaug himself, and Erebor. Again, this is really where Weta shines, in my opinion, because you had to show this broken Erebor, and all this gold just strewn about, and I love the fact that Smaug is immersed in the gold, and that's how he comes out, is you start seeing the gold move, you're like, oh crap.
Yeah, it was much grander than I really imagined when I read the book years ago. To me, I just saw this dragon sleeping on a big pile of gold. They really made it much more grand, much more elaborate. It really looked great, and it's like, and they made Smaug so intimidating that it's like, you can tell he's the king of his domain. He is the one in charge. He's in power. He doesn't, he's not bowing. He's not a silly comical villain. He's not bowing to flattery. Bilbo's trying his best. It's like, I've heard so many great things about you, oh Smaug Almighty. And
Smaug the Stupendous.
It's like, what?
But I didn't believe them.
He's not buying it. He's like, flattery won't save you. I'm going to eat you.
Well, and even better, he even sets the stakes to Bilbo a little bit, because he shatters the magic of the ring.
Yeah.
And makes him take it off. And that was actually a really good moment. I'm like, oh, there you are. And so yeah, the concept that I was most worried about with this movie is Smaug, because CG could easily destroy this character. And you may not be old enough to remember this, but back in the day, I can't remember their name. They do all the Christmas movies. Rankin Bass. They did The Hobbit at one point, an animated feature, and they did Smaug, and Smaug looked okay.
It was a stop-mo, basically, stop-mo animation puppet.
No, it was fully animated.
Oh, it was 2D. Yeah, I saw the 2D. Because we
but
watched
he looked cat-like, and that was kind of the issue. Yeah. And so that kind of ruined Smaug for me as a kid. This was perfect. This was like, if you've played, people can see on my shirt, Dungeons and Dragons has been a part of my life. That is what you envision when you see a dragon. And Smaug just gave you, I agree with you, he gave you the impression that he is the lord of this domain, and while you're in this domain, you are not the top of the food chain. He is. And the way that and here's the thing too, Benedict Cumberbatch, holy crap! Owned that role.
Such a booming voice.
I doubt they I doubt they modified his voice at all.
Yeah,
he owned the role.
Just like it's what James Earl Jones brought to Darth Vader forever, and he brought Smaug to this great booming dragon voice, and it's frightening, and it's big, and it's loud.
What made this even better and made it even more intimidating? Martin Freeman added so much to that. Just as you were saying, he was sitting there stuttering. He was trying to compliment him. He was eventually starting to be snarky with him. And at that point, you just felt like there's nobody coming out alive after this. He is awake, and he is a problem. And it just makes that all the worse. While you can see the Arkenstone here and there, and Bilbo tries to grab it, All he has to do is step his foot down once, and Arkenstone's lost. He could crush it, or he just keeps sending it down the mountain of gold. And so that leads into finally Thorin coming in, and I think this is actually one of the better moments for Thorin, where Bilbo's honest with him. He doesn't have the Arkenstone, and he doesn't believe him. And you can start to see that madness kind of checking in with Thorin. And this is the moment that I wanted to see, and probably we'll see more of in the next movie. But really well done. Richard Armitage really owned this role and owned that moment. So Martin is scared for his life because in front of him is Thorin with a sword, and in the back of him is a really big dragon. Mm-hmm. And so you really kind of get that feeling in Martin's look of, I can't win. Either he's going to stab me or Smaug's going to eat me. And so that was a really great moment, which leads into the dwarves coming in and we having this really wonderfully done, absolutely awesome moment with where they're fighting Smaug in the only way they know how, as being dwarves and being smithies.
Yeah.
And that...
firing up the furnaces.
Yeah. This is another one of those moments where I think that would look awesome in 3D, is the fire stoking from the furnaces. Mm-hmm. And again, just this is one of those points for what it has shined, because they made the Dwarven Forges, they made all the mazy halls of Erebor. It all looked very daunting as well as very claustrophobic. Like, Smaug could literally emerge out of the next corner. Mm-hmm. And so that was a really great moment for them. And it all culminates to them going to the Hall of the Kings and having the golden statue. That would probably be another great moment that was in 3D, where finally the statue starts to come apart.
Yeah.
And they've set the trap for Smaug, and he is literally going to boil in the gold he so covets.
Yes. That was great. I loved it.
I'll bet the 3D looked awesome with that. And obviously, that doesn't do it. In fact, it just enrages Smaug so that he busts out, and then we get the final moments of the film where I love the lines that they did. They are awesome, and Benedict and Martin just owned them. And the fact that Smaug's final lines are, "I am fire, I am death." And at the very end, as a cliffhanger, we get Martin Freeman, "What have we done?"
Yeah.
Because that really just sets things up. I actually thought Smaug was going to get defeated in this movie.
That's what I thought, too.
Because they had a bigger concept in the next movie. They had the Battle of Five Armies. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that they're going to carry Smaug into the next movie is interesting to me. Maybe it's just because Bard is a little bit more prominent in the next one. And so they want to have that moment where, spoiler alert if you haven't read the books, Bard is finally... He redeems his family line and kills Smaug.
Right.
Speaking of which, that was actually also another really great moment, is you have the lines from the book, mm-hmm. and then all of a sudden he steps up and you see the one scale missing.
That's right.
And at that point you go, there is a glimmer of hope. Because he's
got that weakness.
He's got that one weakness that Bard can exploit in the next film. But yeah, that's the Desolation of Smaug. So let's get into our thoughts of the actual film and the presentation itself. Why don't you go ahead and start, because I've been talking the entire time.
Yeah. So, of course, I saw the movie in 3D. I thought it looked atrocious in 3D.
Wow. Okay.
It looked like, how do I put it? It looked literally like videotape. I've seen people compare this to videotape, and it's because Peter Jackson's got a super special, awesome, amazing red high-definition cameras.
Yeah.
He can film it
at
48 frames per second, but of course we people, all of us, are so used to standard movie 24 frames per second that it just looks so jarring, and it really does. It reminds me of looking at videotape. Mm-hmm. Like sometimes old television shows we filmed on videotape, like soap operas, and even with the whole British aspect, because it's just an English story. It reminds me of some of those old Chronicles of Narnia.
Like the old cable TV show.
Yeah, the old pre-Disney Chronicles of Narnia, which your own wife probably owns, and it looked a little like that with better effects. And
yeah, and the one we're talking about is because there was an animated feature of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. We're not talking about that.
No, we're talking about live action.
I can't remember the channel that actually aired it, but
I would reckon BBC, just because
probably because it looked like, I don't know if you remember this, but there used to be like an old Beauty and the Beast soap opera. Mm-hmm. It looked, that's the way that Narnia kind of looked on TV. And that's kind of disappointing to me, that this kind of had the same look in 3D. Even the moments that I was kind of highlighting, so Smaug doesn't look all that good.
I thought Smaug still looked good, because he's well animated, he's well designed by Weta.
Yeah.
A lot of the action scenes, based the way the way everything moves, it doesn't mesh. It's blurry, it's a mess,
So a lot of the intimidation is lost on Smaug, it sounds like, in 3D.
I thought 3D Smaug was intimidating, but I think scenes that looked really bad were the river fight scene.
Oh yeah,
just
that
because
bad.
The way the water would look,
and CG Orlando Bloom would look even worse. We love Orlando, but man, they went to such great lengths to show he hadn't aged, and it didn't work.
So seeing it again in 2D was a lot less jarring. I thought it looked a lot better. Everything meshed a lot better. It didn't look like a blurry, bright mess. And it's kind of the opposite of The Last Airbender in 3D. The Last Airbender had a problem with being too dark in 3D. Well, this was too light in 3D. But in 2D, it looked really good to me, and I liked it better watching it in 2D. I thought I came out feeling a lot better about the movie after all.
Yeah, I can see that problem with it. For me, I hadn't seen it in 3D. This is one of those movies where 3D is really hard for me to justify, and Alex knows this better than anybody, because some movies can look absolutely awesome in it. For example, the first Iron Man, that would look really, really good in 3D. Second Iron Man, not so much. It wouldn't look good at all to me. And so this is one of those things where I don't usually buy into the 3D gimmick. And I don't go see the movie in 3D, obviously, because it's like $10-12 where we're at for a ticket, and it's just not worth it. So that's a little disappointing to me, but also makes me kind of happy that I didn't spend the money there.
Yeah, be glad.
Now we talked a lot about the positive stuff, so let's actually be let's be critics here. What did we not like about the movie?
The movie was just a little too long, I felt. There's so many...
Which is really a lot to say, since we're used to the Lord of the Rings being 3 hours.
Yes, they're 3 hours, but even this felt a little draggy. I'm just thinking a few moments here and there should have been trimmed a little more in editing.
Yeah.
Not necessarily... I can understand some full scenes you probably couldn't have really cut, but I'd like full little moments, maybe just little cuts here and there I think you could have made.
Sure.
And... I didn't like the subplot about Evangeline Lilly's character.
Yeah, that seemed really, really forced, like they really wanted a Liv Tyler moment.
Yeah, they just wanted this extra romantic subplot for no real reason.
And we don't have a problem with Evangeline. We just don't think she was utilized properly here.
She was great in the movie. She acted very well, and she played the part excellent. And I don't have a complaint with Lily. I just have a complaint with the character. I don't think it was needed. Yeah,
it's not in the book. It was it was... I think they made Tauriel because they wanted to have a reason for Legolas to be in this movie.
Yeah,
and so they hyped on the romance, but at the same time, she's, as you can kind of see, she's falling in love with Keeley. And so you're just like, oh, she's not going to have either. And it feels forced.
Yeah. What else, if I can say I didn't like about the movie? Oh my goodness. I think that's about it, really. It's the 3D I didn't like, the whole super special, awesome high-definition camera shooting, and I never thought I'd be one of those people who joins being a stickler for old film, but I'm saying go back to film stock, people. Maybe we need to take a step back from making super special, awesome high-definition cameras.
It was a great idea in theory for Peter to go back and do that, but I don't think it's proven fruitful for him, which is sad because I love Peter, but unfortunately this was one of those rare opportunities, and if he just kind of stuck to his guns, maybe he would have had a bigger budget to work with, and some of the things like Orlando Bloom probably could have been done better. So those are pretty much the things that you didn't like from the film.
Yes.
Okay, things that I didn't like about the film. Obviously, CG Legolas. He's the only issue that I had with the CG department in this movie. Everything else looked awesome, including the freakishly huge CG bees. My God. CG spiders. I think I even remember the first night. You'll have nightmares from those things because they are definitely more daunting than Shelob. One of the problems that I had with the movie, obviously, is I didn't think Legolas needed to be in this movie at all. I get why they brought him in, but I was one of those people that was like seeing the invincible Legolas in the Two Towers in The Return of the King and just waiting for him to slip up once. Mm-hmm. And so I actually liked one of the moments in Lake Town where he's been hit by the orc and his nose is bleeding, and Orlando's obviously pissed.
No,
I'm literally the person in the theater going, "Oh, poor baby! You're not an invincible one-man army. You're not the person that could slay an entire Oliphant." And so I thought that was a really cool concept because it added mortality, but at the same time, he was so piled on with makeup, or they had the CG skin and it just didn't work. Mm-hmm. Another failing in this movie, I hate to say it because I'm a big fan of Howard Shore, but somewhere in the line, a decision was made to not use some of the materials from the first Hobbit.
Right.
And I don't know why. It made no sense, because there are a couple of good moments where that Misty Mountain bellowing fellowship theme would have been really, really good, especially when they're trying to get up into the Lonely Mountain and find the keyhole. And I don't understand why they didn't do that. I get that they wanted to have kind of a Two Towers moment where we're establishing a new theme. So, for example, in Fellowship of the Ring, it was the theme of the Fellowship. Mm-hmm. In Two Towers, it was the Rohan theme. And in Return of the King, it was Gondor. Or the theme of Gondor. In this one, they really tried to make the theme of Lake Town like that. And it's good, but at the same time, it's the one shining moment of music in this whole thing. The only other shining moment, and I don't consider this as part of the film because it's the credits, is the independent song that was done, I can't remember by whom, but it's called Icy Fire. Mm-hmm. And that's a really daunting kind of song, but it sets the tone for what's just happened. Other than that, the music really kind of failed. Yeah. We had reused assets from The Lord of the Rings, but not The Hobbit. Mm-hmm. And that made... I still want to hear... I still want to see why that decision was made. Because it was, in my opinion, it was not a good decision.
Yeah, I gotta say, the music didn't catch me like the original Lord of the Rings did.
Yes.
Just, maybe I got so used to the big booming choirs that they brought out every time for every...
Yeah, the Shire, don't get me wrong, the first movie, the Shire theme was back, and I didn't have a problem with that. But in this movie, there was only one booming theme, and that was the Lake Town theme. Because Lothlorien got reused, and then the rest of the time we kind of got a new tone for either Isengard or the Mordor theme in Dol Guldur, and it just felt out of place. Mm-hmm. And so the music is really where I think this movie faltered, and I hope that they make up for that in the next movie, because that's going to be an epic storyline, and if you don't do it right, it's gonna destroy that final fight sequence, in my opinion. Another bad thing in this movie, the orcs are kind of downplayed in this movie. They aren't as devastating as they were in the first movie. Mm-hmm. Arzak the Defiler doesn't really have a role because he's off in Dol Guldur prepping the armies. And so he isn't as daunting. Really, the villain of this movie, I get, is Smaug. Yeah. But in the meantime, the orcs look just silly. Especially when most of them get defeated by a giant barrel, almost Donkey Kong style, destroying them. And that actually goes into another complaint I had. Don't get me wrong, I love the fact that the dwarves are kind of a comedic element, but I really do think that they've poured it on a little too hard. Mm-hmm. Because at the same time, they're supposed to be dwarves. They're supposed to be prideful. The only time when we get this, and unfortunately he was used as a lot of comic fodder in this movie, was Dwalin, where he's one of the guys who gets fish poured on him in the barrel, and he's one of the few that just steps out and goes, "Do not touch me." And of course, when they're trying to escape and trying to get into Bard's house, they emerge from the toilet, mm-hmm. and it's Dwalin that emerges first. "We will not speak of this." And Dwalin, I think, was really well done in the first movie. Now he's like Bomber in the second movie, and that hurts. Because I like the fact that, he was... If there was ever kind of the stalwart protector of Tharin, it was Bomber. And then it was not Bomber. Wow. There's too many of them that sound similar. Dwalin and Balin, to some extent. He's the advisor.
Yeah.
And I think Balin was kind of downplayed, although he was used really well in the concept of whether or not Thorin is going mad. I especially like that moment with him where, I'm not going to risk going into that mountain for the sake of one burglar. Bilbo. His name is Bilbo. Trying to play back to this child that he's known for so long. And also, I gotta say, the whole Keeley romance with Tauriel felt really forced, and especially how that ends with him being the one that gets the Morgul venom, and now he's Frodo, and she's Liv Tyler. And it just feels so... I felt so bad for the guy.
Yeah.
It was like, they forced this romance on him, and they can't really go anywhere with it, so... And especially since he isn't with them in Erebor. And I think he actually would have been a really cool element in Erebor. Mm-hmm. Especially his brother. Who are supposed to be the youngest of the dwarves. They're supposed to be the stout warriors. And they are underutilized in this movie. I thought they were really well done in the first. They're not utilized very well in this one. So we've talked about the good, we've talked about the bad. How does this movie measure up for us?
I'd say it's really good. I'd say see it.
On a 1 to 10 scale for you.
I'm going to bump it up. My initial rating was 7, but I'm going to give it an 8 now.
Okay.
Just seeing it in 2D this time. And, it's still a really good movie. Few hiccups here and there.
For me, I'd probably give it about an 8.5, just because where this film needed to shine, it did. Smaug needed to be awesome, and he was.
Right.
Erebor needed to look broken, but still awesome, and it did. This really is, for those who love film design and love the work of Weta, this is their movie.
Yeah.
This is where Weta got to shine and show their true mettle.
Yes.
Which is not really can be said of... I mean, they have their showcases in each movie, but not like a full-on movie where it's all Weta all the time. Just like, whoa!
Yeah, they don't do much really work outside of Jackson stuff.
No, they really don't. And so, yeah, my bottom line is that it's an 8.5. It's good, and I think you should see it in the theaters, but for me... And one of the reasons also that I'm giving it an 8.5 is I think the appendices will be awesome for it, and I think the extended edition, even though it'll have 20 minutes of footage, will still be worth it.
Yeah.
So I'm being kind of generous with it. If without the extended edition, I'd probably give it an 8. So in the meantime, also, let's just cover this because we're at the beginning of a new year, which means all the films have come out. We've seen plenty of them. We've even commented on a few of them in our Let's Plays. So maybe as kind of an ending thing to do with this is let's give our top 3 movies of 2013.
Okay.
Because now it's the end of the year, and people... I know people have been asking me, since I've done a lot of commentary, what I thought was the best. And I'm going to expand it. If you want to do a top 5, you can. So we'll start with Alex.
I'll just stick with 3. I'd say Gravity, Pacific Rim, and Wolf Children.
For specific reasons, or?
Yeah, well, Gravity to me was just, it was an amazing experience, and there's a movie I say go see in 3D.
Yeah.
I mean, you might get a little too dizzy, so I'm gonna caution you on that. But anyone who can take the 3D just fine, I say go see it in 3D. It looks really great in 3D.
Yeah.
It's it's a really good movie from Alfonso Cuarón. It's not exactly something I expected for him, but it was just an emotional roller coaster ride. It was so just beautiful looking visually. It's an experience, and it was a great story too. Pretty simple. It's, you could say, open water in space, but still so effective. And yeah, I was even looking at a little sideways because it's Sandra Bullock and George Clooney in it, but still, they caught me. It got me. It got my emotions. And I just loved it. God, I gotta get that movie on Blu-ray, but it just will not be the same in 2D.
Sure. Okay, so, and then your number 2, why is Pacific Rim?
Pacific Rim, probably just because I'm such an anime geek, and you just feel...
It has to be said.
Just feel Del Toro's love for both, for everything, not just anime, but, giant robots, Godzilla movies, monster movies.
Which you got flack for.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that.
I love the giant robot action in that. It was real fun. Just a pretty simple action movie, and enjoyable to the fullest extent.
Yeah, because we went and saw it together, and
yes.
we were both very, very, very shocked and awed.
Yes.
But this third one, I've never heard of it. The Wolf Children?
Wolf Children. This is an anime movie, so it's a little kind of off kilter, but technically it's not brand new to 2013, but it was released by Funimation in 2013.
Okay.
And this is Mamoru Hosada's new film, after Summer Wars and that, so that I was just really dazzled with. I'd say it's even my favorite Hosada film, and even more than The Girl Who Lived Through Time and Summer Wars, which are also great movies. But Wolf Children was just an endearingly sweet movie, and it might be a little too sweet for some people, but I loved it. I thought it was a very cute family film.
Okay.
It touches so much on the bonds of a...
Which is really kind of amazing because, 2013 was the year of Arrietty and Up on Poppy Hill, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think as far as Disney... Well, no, Arrietty was like 2011. So.
Okay.
I was thinking as far as Disney releases go, but yeah, I didn't see those actually. I will see them, but... Wolf Children to me was just an enchanting film. I think it really felt like it had the same charm of a lot of Steven Spielberg's early films.
Okay.
What made those so enchanting, you just kind of had that same charm to them. This really just sweet tale of a, single mother just lost her husband and now has to raise these two wolf children, basically. They're part wolf, part human because of this mixed relationship she got into. And it's great to really see how the children themselves kind of grow up, and has a great coming of age kind of feel to it, and a great, again, it's almost kind of a different sort of family movie from Hosada, because both Summer Wars and Wolf Children are kind of family movies, whereas Summer Wars was really about stick with your family, care for your family, they're important, that's what's important to you. Well, this felt a little bit like it had a different message, and that is be able to, as a parent, let go of your children when their time has come to let them go.
Okay.
And that's, without spoiling too much, I feel like that's what the characters have to go through.
Okay. All right, so Shadow Blazers picks of the year 2013. They are Gravity, Pacific Rim, and The Wolf Children.
Yes.
So I'm actually going to go with the top 5 because I've done a lot of reviews this year, especially on my radio program, which hopefully we'll be seeing a return in the next month or two. So my number 1, it's actually kind of funny. I haven't seen Gravity. Gravity is one of those things where I got advised really early on, don't go see this until you have control of a pause button, because it will give you headaches, it will make you nauseous, it will do all that. So I haven't seen it.
Right.
So keep that in mind, guys. But I still don't think it would change my number 1. And my number 1 this year was Pacific Rim. Alex can say this for a fact. I was absolutely awed with this movie because it proved to me that since I am a giant robot fan, this kind of a movie can be done here. And that is hope for me because I'm a big mecha fan. I would love a Gundam movie, a Robotech movie, but under the right director. Well, boys and girls, Guillermo just proved that he could do it. In fact, I would actually like Guillermo to be handed the reins of properties like Transformers, because I think he would redeem that, where Michael Bay has done iffy stuff with it. So that's my number 1. I absolutely loved it, and I love the fact that it was its own independent property. It adopted from a lot of Giant Robot and a lot of the Toho monster movies, but it was its own property. My number 2 is now The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug, because I had a lot of expectations for that movie, and they were met. So in a lot of cases, that was an awesome movie to see. Smaug is just as awesome as he should have been. So yeah, that actually just barely took the number 2 spot. And for people who've been following my list on radio, that's a big feat, because my number 3 is Star Trek Into Darkness. I'm not a Star Trek fan, but the way that they told the Wrath of Khan storyline and took their own liberties with it, I thought was just brilliant. It's a Star Trek movie for my time, because I didn't grow up with the original series. I grew up with like the Next Generation. So giving me a unique take on my Kirk and my Spock was an interesting concept for me. My number 4 is probably going to be Man of Steel. Man of Steel, I I get it. That movie has a ton of controversy around it, and it's earned it. It really has. So I can't begrudge that. But at the same time, it was not the Superman I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on the other end of that, where they really could have done Superman as an icon for hope, and they don't. And in fact, I'm one of the people that has been very disappointed with the Man of Steel 2 becoming Batman versus Superman and ultimately a Justice League movie, and very disappointed with that because I really think they're not going to do well with it, especially Zack Snyder. Sorry, guys, but I don't think he did a good job with this. And my fifth movie was actually kind of a shocker. And it'll be a shocker to you, too, because, I don't even want to give movies like The Lone Ranger or After Earth any kind of credence, because they just don't deserve it. My number 5, surprisingly, was the second Hunger Games movie.
I've not seen that one yet, actually.
I have, and... You remember the problems I had with the first movie. Shaky cam.
We shared the same problems. We both hated the shaky cam.
We've heard basically the guy got fired, or the director.
He didn't fire. He just resigned because he wanted to do everything.
Yeah, but you and I were rejoicing because the shaky cam just drove us nuts.
Yeah.
And so when I saw Catching Fire, obviously my wife is a Hunger Games fan, and strangely enough, I actually got cast into a radio drama for the Hunger Games, so I had to go see it to do research. But Catching Fire did everything that I think the first film didn't, and did it well, and actually set the stakes better than the first movie did. So I'm not saying that it was obviously it's number 5 on my list. It wasn't a masterpiece by any stretch of the imagination, but it got me interested enough to go see the third movie and see if that's going to measure up, or is it going to be another shaky cam fest. Because Catching Fire did have some shaky cam moments, but it realized that you don't need to do shaky cam to make combat look good.
Yeah.
So a lot of the combat moments were not shaky cam.
Oh, that is a big relief for me.
Yeah. A lot of the moments that were shaky cam were... in the beginning, where they're back in town, or on they're supposed to do this victory tour, and so they had a few shaky cam moments there, just to kind of show the unrest in the city or the nation of Panem. And then the other one was not when they were in the combat of the games, but when they were hitting traps, they would go a little bit into shaky cam.
Right.
And it wasn't too bad because they were running, and so it made sense. In a lot of cases, the shaky cam did look like it was also on a rail. So I didn't fault that too bad. But yeah, it was good, and it got me interested in the third movie. It didn't awe me like the other movies did. So my top 5, again, Pacific Rim, The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug, Star Trek Into Darkness. My 4th was Man of Steel, and my 5th was Catching Fire. I'm actually kind of disappointed in myself because Iron Man should have been in there too, but Iron Man it wasn't awe-worthy, not like the Avengers. But in the meantime, before we end this thing out, let's just be clear. Let's clarify on a few things here. So people might be asking, "Are you going to be doing this weekly?" No.
It's more like when we feel like it.
Yeah, it's really when we see a movie that we think will be entertaining enough to talk about in a vlog. So if you're expecting this weekly, unfortunately it won't be. We do have some movies kind of spread out through the year, but you may be seeing some breaks here and there. So don't expect this thing weekly, and above all else, this is not going to be like an active, I want to say like an active show, Drak Shadow. Yeah. It is going to be when we find a movie that interests us.
Yeah. And
then we will go see it, and then we'll do the vlog for you. But in the meantime, along with this idea, we also have some other great ideas coming to the channel, as well as our own individual channels. So keep in mind for that, but we're going to go ahead and end this thing out, and I guess end out the year 2013, because everything from here on in is 2014.
Yep.
Do you want go ahead and pick your channel really quick and showcase anything you have going?
I'm Shadow Blazer 3000 on YouTube. I do have uploads of animes that I own, and they don't probably come as often as they should. I try, guys. I do have a day job. I'm also hoping to launch a solo LP of my own, a solo Let's Play, that is. So we'll see where that goes. I'm still trying to gather footage. Again, it's kind of when I have time.
Yeah. And what was your last anime review? Was it Blood Sea?
Yeah, it was Blood Sea. That's actually not in my collection. That was a more negative review. So now I'm hoping to go back and
go see that, guys. That was hilarious. I was actually part of the filming of that. That was awesome.
I'm hoping to get back into positive territory, review stuff that I own, which is stuff I like. So yep, that's it for me.
Yeah, and then my channel is youtube.com/Drak2326. I'm right now doing Let's Plays of the Final Fantasy series of games. I know a lot of people have done them, but
They're
Final
classics.
Fantasy is... Yeah, exactly. It's a classic for me, so I just decided that'd be a really great place to start off since I'm a big RPG fan.
Mm-hmm.
I've also got plenty of other plans for my channel. We're doing these movie vlogs. I might be doing game reviews of my own on my channel, as well as, if we come together on some of this stuff, it will come over to the Drak Shadow channel, I think. Unless it's more specific to our channel. So, like, for example, if, say, we were to review a very pivotal anime, then it would probably go to Shadow Blazer's channel, because it would make more sense for it to be there. Mm-hmm. Whereas if we're reviewing a very pivotal game, it might be more...
Your channel.
More my channel, because that's where I'm sticking my content with. But in the meantime, I also have a radio program that is relaunching, and you guys kind of get the sneak peek of it. It's called Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions. And you will even see spots from Shadow Blazer on it. It will be up on iTunes as a podcast, so come and check it out. But in the meantime, I think that is it for us. And obviously, come over to youtube.com/DrakShadow, where I think these movie vlogs are going.
Yep.
So we already have 3 Let's Plays going of Sonic Adventure, Phantasy Star 2, and Pokemon Yellow. We're finishing out Pokemon Yellow finally.
I know.
It lasted way longer than Blue, but that was technical error, and I'm not going to repeat it. But yeah, it was kind of technical error. And in the meantime, we also have a bunch of other. A lot of people have liked our seasonal Let's Plays that we've done. So we did Castlevania for Halloween,
Mega Man for Christmas,
and we have been asked to bring them back maybe even earlier than their given months, so we're considering that, but we also have some other seasonal Let's Plays we want to do.
Yeah.
Including one I think we hinted in the Pokemon Yellow Let's Play, so...
Okay.
I don't think there's a reason to hide it, but yes, Alex has finally convinced me for our April seasonal one, we're going to go through Pokemon Green and the horrible localization it got, which will be interesting. So it's going to be kind of like a fast-forward Let's Play, just going over the dialogue. But in the meantime, look forward to all of this stuff, but we're going to go ahead and end this thing. I am Drak.
I'm Shadow.
And we'll see you next time. We'll probably notify on Twitter when the next movie is. That's probably the best way to go.
Yeah.
So keep watching our Twitters. Keep watching the Facebook page. We'll notify there, definitely. But in the meantime...
So long, guys.
So long, 2013. We miss you already.